Our beloved 8% Hard AF Seltzer is now live in over 2,500 locations across the United States. We're now available in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, Ohio, Idaho, Illinois, Michigan, Montana, Oregon, and Texas. Go to hardafseltzer.com today, click on the store locator, enter your city or zip, and find the nearest location closest to you. Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinkin' Bros, kids. We got a huge Wednesday show here. As you know, we are T-minus 6 days away from the election of our lifetime. Cenk Uygur, the founder of Young Turks, will be joining us today on the program. You and D'Anthony Holloway had a nice chat the other night about Trump and Kamala.
Yeah, I just want to point out that, and this our audience will understand this, but Ross spent a few minutes practicing your name before the show began.
I did.
Because if it's not John Smith, this motherfucker will never get it right.
I'll never get it right. And whoever your team is, Cenk, did a really great job of spelling that out phonetically for me.
They're great. They're wonderful professionals. And you said it perfectly, so you nailed it. The practice worked.
Look at that.
Practice makes perfect. We believe in it. Now, having said that, if you'd gotten it wrong, I wouldn't give a shit. It's a hard name, brother.
So if I accidentally say Kamala, you're not going to get mad at me? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no. See, that's Dan. You and I had this conversation the other day. We're not like the normal left, right? That you're used to.
Isn't that the most pedantic fucking argument you've heard? Like it seems like total misdirection. Like, oh, they said her name wrong. Like, oh, what about all the other stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And before we get into it today, Cenk, for our audience, kind of want to introduce you to everybody just in case they haven't listened to the Young Turks and they don't know the backstory. You have a massive network over there that you've created. What year did you start it and what made you get into doing it?
Yeah, we started back in 2002. So we are actually, and then we went live on the air with a daily video stream at the end of 2005. So we were actually the longest running internet show in history, period. And on top of that, we were the first partner for YouTube. So that actually makes me the original YouTuber. So we're as old school as it gets. In fact, we have a podcast named Old School. And so we've been doing it for a long time. We're on about a dozen platforms now. We do everything from 1-minute TikTok videos to a 24-hour channel that is going to beat CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News one day. And that's on a lot of your platforms. You just go either TYT or the Young Turks on almost any platform, and you'll get us. Got about 27 million subscribers and 29 billion views now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably already outpacing MSNBC and CNN combined, probably, right? Maybe not Fox.
I appreciate that, Dan. Yeah, it depends on the platform. So, we're honest to a fault. And so when you put their TV audience in, they still have bigger numbers. But if you're on YouTube, Facebook, and some of the social media platforms, we're just rolling over people.
Yeah, now how's it been on your side? Because obviously we're on the right, you're on the left, and we'll get to the presidential candidates in a minute here. We're throttled constantly. Videos are deleted left and right. We had 2 deleted last week, and then we've got strikes, and then they'll take away those strikes, and then like a weird 7-day thing. Does that happen to you because you're a left-leaning network?
Yeah, definitely. Happens all the time. It's super frustrating. And there's different factors that are involved. And so right now, a lot of the platforms are throttling before the election, which is so painful because I'm not just a host of the show. I founded the company and I run the company. So I'm on the business end too. And it's so frustrating, guys, when that's when we're supposed to make a good amount of our revenue to just be able to, keep going is during election season. When they throttle, it's maddening. So Look, there's a lot of factors into why they do it, but it definitely happens to the right and the left, and it depends on the situation. And there's so many different rules you have to follow. We got a company of 75 people, and like some people's job is just to figure out all of the rules that we have to follow to make sure that we don't get throttled, et cetera.
I mean, this is just classic regulatory bullshit that we see from the government, right? I mean, this is always designed to cater to the the top 1% of the top 1%. Mm-hmm. This is what, especially in banking and the automotive industry and tech these days, it's all kind of designed where, like he's talking about, unless you have a law firm, like if you're doing this business stuff, unless you have a law firm like Morrison Forster or somebody like that, that's got all these clerks that are doing all this groundwork all the time, a small business can't meet the regulation requirements.
No.
It just doesn't exist. And that's what they try to do on YouTube. Which is kind of fucked up, to be honest.
So, Dan, this one's a little bit more complicated because it's less the government in this case. It's more mainstream media that is putting so much pressure on all the online platforms. And the online platforms are kind of suckers, if you ask me, on that regard, because mainstream media is their enemy. It's literally their competitors, right? So mainstream media then comes in and goes, oh my God, the drinking bros are saying bad things. The Young Turks are saying bad things. You should shut them all down. Oh, it is so unsafe for advertisers. And this is like a propaganda war that mainstream media has against digital media. And I think digital media falls for it way too often. They panic. And I'll tell you guys, you might not like this one. The thing that really drives a lot of this, that scares the shit out of the digital media companies, is when Republicans do congressional hearings. And they're like, oh my God, you guys, man, you said something about Bud Light and you did this and you did that. And that's it. We're going to shut you down. And then digital media panics because there's billions on the line. But when they panic, they bring everybody down. They don't just bring the left down. They don't bring just the right down. They bring everybody down, especially in news and politics. And they get back to fluffy cats and knitting and shit.
I mean, it does happen, I would say. Well, we can discuss this. My experience is that it happens quite a bit more, not just frequently, but to a larger or to a greater impact towards the right. Like the Hunter Biden laptop story, absolutely true from start to finish. But the media, not only did they open up with a salvo of it being Russian disinformation, but then they started, the media and publishing companies, which is to say social media companies, censored the fuck out of it, right? Is there, what pro-left story did that happen to? What got censored that was that big? Because I don't remember one, but maybe from your perspective, since you're paying more attention to that, you would know.
Yeah, we all get stuck in our own bubbles and we don't see each other's stories as much. So I appreciate you bringing that up. There's actually something that's happening right now. So look, the Hunter Biden laptop story, you could say, first of all, what I would do is if I was in office and I like, unlike the partisans, if I cared about getting it right, I'd say, who said it was a Russian disinformation story? And what did you base that on? Because I'm curious. Because look, I think Hunter Biden's laptop was largely bullshit. And inside of it, there's a line in there. He says, don't promise that we can get dad to do anything because we can't. And I thought it was exculpatory in a lot of ways. But there's no information that it was Russian disinformation. None. So I don't know if they made that up. Who made that up? Why did they make it up? So I'm on your side in figuring that out, right? But right now, in terms of suppressing the stories, Wall Street Journal, and credit to them, even though they're owned by Rupert Murdoch, they actually did a fair article on this. And they looked into X right now. And Elon is sending twice as many right-wing tweets through the algorithm as left-wing tweets. And so that is greatly promoting the right-wing side, Donald Trump, et cetera. And he's one of Trump's largest donors. I get it, but then let's be fair. And by the way, as a capitalist, I say, hey, look, if he wants to do that, he owns the thing, right? And he can say it, but you should be upfront about it and say, yeah, I'm cheating in favor of Trump. And then when you say, I can't believe that Twitter suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story before the last election, well, then you got less credibility, because right now that's exactly what you're doing, kind of on an industrial scale. Not you guys, but Elon is on that.
Well, I mean, there is a subtle difference between, and maybe it's so subtle it doesn't matter, but I think it does, between promoting content versus suppressing a story, a specific story that would have had implications about that election, right? Like, because the story about the laptop isn't about Hunter Biden getting his dick sucked by Russian prostitutes. I don't fucking care about that. As a matter of fact,
I actually like that part of it.
Yeah, 100%. Like, maybe we can hang out at some point.
Yeah,
Hunter.
I love to go to Vegas with
yeah.
Hunter and have some crack and some prosties. That would be a blast.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, that would be great. But the other stuff, the emails, the big guy, all this stuff, deserved a look. It deserved a look. And so when you say who said it was Russian disinfo, that was what, the 51 former intelligence officials, which they all lied, right? Mm-hmm. So now, anytime anybody brings that up, and we can get into this in a minute, because this is one of the positions that a lot of people on the left hold, that the institutional people, both in state and in the intelligence community, and even for domestic policy, like, oh, Trump's dangerous. Those people say that. Those people who lied to us over and over again and built these 25-year-long wars or the debt and all this stuff. It's like, you don't really have a whole lot of credibility. Just because you've done something a lot and for a long time doesn't mean you're good at it, right? Shaq shot a lot of free throws. Mm-hmm. But if the game's tied and I need free throws hit, I'm not getting Shaq up there. I'm not getting John Bolton up there. You know what I mean? I'm not getting fucking Hillary Clinton up there. There's no way. These people are incompetent.
Yeah, and then from our side, Cenk, as far as our censorship goes, so for Facebook, let's just take Facebook since you were pointing out Twitter. Not that I disagree with you on that one, because, look, Elon is going hard for Trump. He's donated a lot of money. He's opening up for him at his rallies. Would that shock me? Absolutely not. But on the other side, it has happened to the right for years. And for us, take Instagram and Facebook, a.k.a. Meta, we have been shut down until May of 2025, as far as they won't show any of our posts in our feeds or allow us to gain subscribers or anything like that, from the New York Times photo of the assassination attempt. So when Trump was with the bloody ear, the famous pose with his fist in the air there, it was the actual photo from the New York Times. They put a blurred image over it and said, this is disinformation, it was false. And so our accounts have been flagged until May, it says, I'm looking at it now, May of 2025 for that. And then, magically they said that they had fixed it. So I understand from the right and the left, it just seems to be happening to the right a lot more because, look, they've been in charge for the last 4 years. So maybe the next administration will unlock that. Overall, do you think that there should be anything flagged for misinformation, or should it just be open for everyone on all these platforms?
Yeah, so look, I'm so glad we're having these conversations because we all get slightly different information in our bubbles, and it doesn't mean that it's all wrong. It's just that you could just be missing out the other side's perspective, right? So I understand what you guys are saying about the right-wing content. Now, let me share you with my impression here. Again, with Facebook, we're one of the first 3 video partners they ever had, ABC, NFL, and Young Turks, okay? So Facebook, before they started suppressing news, 8 out of the top 10 every single day would be right-wing. Okay, so it'd be Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, over and over and over and over again. And Zuckerberg and Shapiro are friends. They'd have dinner, etc. So from our perspective, we're like, what the fuck? It looks like they're totally favoring the right wing. Then what they did after that is, congressional hearings, Zuckerberg gets yelled at. The advertisers get panicked about the Bud Light thing and all the other stuff. And then they just suppress news. So we now make only 10% of what we used to make on Facebook. I mean, that is devastating for a business. Mm-hmm. We're down to 10% of what we used to make. And that is because they're shutting everything down. They're saying no more news and politics. We're tired of taking crap on this. We're just going to do the other parts of our business. And I don't think anybody wins there, because what people don't talk about is, okay, yeah, but what's the alternative? So, like, there's super hard questions. And I've had these conversations at YouTube, too. And what you guys don't know, or the right wing doesn't know and doesn't see, is that I actually support all of us, including you guys, when I'm in those conversations. Because I get it. There's a line at which, like, if you threaten someone physically, can't have it, yep. Right? And then if someone is doing an outrageous lie, a community note, something along those lines, and then you could debate that community note, maybe that might make sense, because a lot of people, my parents are now older, and this is not a right or left wing thing. I mean, they'll believe anything on Facebook. And I'm like, no, don't drink the coconut oil. No, yeah. Right? And so you got to help a little bit with the disinformation, and then again, that doesn't mean you shut it down. But we could debate, hey, is that correct community note or not? Just like on X, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when they go to shut it down completely, I say no, don't do that, because what's the alternative? We go back to mainstream media, which is totally full of shit and tells us that the politicians aren't corrupt, that all the donor money doesn't affect them. Well, that's not bias. That's a massive bias. That's the bias that's been destroying this country, right? Oh, all the politicians are honest and they're having a debate about the wars. They're not having a debate. They're having a competition over who can cash more checks. So I don't want to go back to the biggest bullshitters on the planet. I would rather deal with, even if it's like guys who I loathe and who I think is totally unacceptable, I'd rather battle guys like Alex Jones, et cetera, that I can't stand and I think is a giant liar. But at least we're in this messy marketplace of ideas, as opposed to the monopoly that mainstream media had, where they just, through implication, lie to us 24/7.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. So the one guy out of we've been on the air for 9 years, top 40 in comedy for the last 9 consecutive years. The one guy I was finally able to get a hold of on YouTube, I had this exact conversation. I said, why not just open it up to the right and the left? Let the channels do what the channels are going to do, because people are going to live in their bubble whether we like it or not. You're going to tune in to who you want to hear and listen to on a daily basis, and then block out everybody else. So why not open it up? At the time, YouTube was not profitable. You could monetize all the content. If you thought some of it was aggressive, do a YouTube for night, and then just have it be a separate thing. There's a YouTube for kids or whatever, because yes, this is replacing mainstream media. There is voices out there that we love more than everybody else's, and they're all probably going to go away in the next 5 years. I don't see how CNN stays in business, or MSNBC. I don't see how the late night shows stay in business. Jimmy Fallon, Kimmel, all those other guys, they're slowly being replaced by podcasts. We've already seen it with FM radio, how FM radio is dead. Everybody's moving to YouTube. It is a great platform at the end of the day. I wish they were fair to both sides and just opened it up and monetized all of it. I don't really see the harm in it at the end of the day, but apparently they do.
Well, this is just creative destruction. This happens all the time throughout human history. Some new modality or tech comes along, and it's people move from what they're doing to the other thing. Some people lose their jobs. It'll have good or bad effects on the economy, short and long term. They're tools to be used, but the problem comes with centralization of power, right? That's always a bad thing. There very rarely can one person, a monarch or a plutocracy, like a couple of people that run a country, does that actually go well? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It just can't. People have this natural inclination to rebel against that shit. And I think the reason that it's been so easy for, the social media companies and all this stuff, Cenk and I talked about it the other day on his show, actually. The deregulation, from my perspective, is typically a good thing, but the government started choosing sides. And the purpose of choosing sides was to make sure that their friends got rich so they could fund their political campaigns. That's it, right? And the reason that the masses, as it were, will either capitulate to that or even defend it in some cases is because they don't understand first principles, right? Like it's easy to say free speech. It's easy to say shall not be infringed with regard to the Second Amendment. But if you don't understand the underlying infrastructure of that idea, then really you should go learn about it or shut the fuck up, right? One of those two things. Like we track this idea from throughout all of human history, really. In the first through third centuries, there was a lot of hubbub about it, about individual rights. And there's a couple of markers throughout history where there were big movements, like the Magna Carta gave rights to the barons, right, to like lower aristocracy, but still aristocracy. Then you see like the Serf Rebellion, 1525. Then you see about 100 years later the Levelers and Agreement of the People, which eventually became our Constitution, right? Like you have to understand each one of these building blocks to understand why is it exactly that free speech is important. It's because of property rights, in my opinion. The ultimate property, or the ultimate right is property rights. The ultimate property right is your person. And not just bodily autonomy, right? Like what you say and what you think, because what you say is what you think. And trying to stop somebody from saying something is trying to change the way they think. That's what it is. It's manufacturing consent, and it's fucking evil. But if you don't understand all this stuff and everything that went into it, it's just a platitude to say free speech. That doesn't actually mean anything, right? And by the way, people say this all the time. I've heard you say it before, Cenk, that free speech only matters when it's something you don't want to hear, right? That's when it matters. Otherwise, nobody fucking cares.
Yeah. Okay, let me jump in on that. So look, we don't need to be babied and protected, and so like this is where I disagree with some of the left. So like for example, Trump said in 2016 that I want a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the country. I'm atheist now, but I'm from Turkey, so my family's Muslim. I grew up Muslim, and so that's super offensive, right? Saying you guys are so dangerous as a whole people, like a couple of billion people, are so dangerous we don't want you in the country. Okay, so a lot of people get offended by that, and then they say, okay, maybe he shouldn't be allowed to say things like that. No, he should be allowed to say things like that, and then I should be able to fight back. So don't stop me from fighting back. Don't stop him from saying it. I got this. Don't sweat it. Like the left is over sweating. Like, how do we shut it down? You don't have to shut it down. You can just beat it, right? Come up with a better argument. Go up to people and go, hey, would you like it if Biden came and said we should do a complete and total shutdown of Christians entering the country? Christians are dangerous, etc. And then we can have a debate. Oh, did he really say that? Of course, with Trump, this is where we'll get into disagreements. Everybody always makes excuses. Oh, he didn't say that. He didn't mean it. He was joking, etc. But that's all right. Let me at him, right?
Yeah.
So, but what I'm going to ask you guys to do on the right is to also live by that. So I've been doing this for 22 years. So I'm on the record of defending Don Imus, Megyn Kelly, Rush Limbaugh, it's Ben Shapiro, and Coulter. All those guys from don't cancel them. Let them make any speeches they want on college campuses. Don't cancel their shows. Let's meet ideas with more ideas. But sometimes on the right, you go, okay, so this one is not necessarily a right-left thing more than establishment versus the rest of us. But so the peace protesters go and protest on college campus, and they're like, oh, they criticize Israel. Arrest them. Well, what the fuck? How is that not cancel culture? I mean, it doesn't get any more cancel culture than I didn't like that you're protesting a foreign government, so I'm going to arrest you. That's crazy, right? So when that happens, we need the right wing to come in and go, no. We meant no cancel culture. And now this is the part that's going to trigger some people. Trump says that, that the left is the enemies from within, and maybe we use the military against protesters. What are we doing? How is this freedom of speech? How is this First Amendment? I mean, that's crazy talk.
Well, you're talking about the protesters that killed 28 people and created $2 billion worth of damage across U.S. cities in 2020, right? That's who he was talking about.
Black Lives Matter, I believe.
Well, it doesn't matter what organization it was. I don't think any organization was really in charge of any of that shit. I think
no, but Dan. So look, two things. Yeah, one is about the college protesters. I assume and hope we agree on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be clear, I don't give two fucks about Israel or any other country that's not my own. I couldn't care less about them. If somebody wants to say whatever the fuck. Here's what I do care about, though. If somebody pulls my flag down and puts a Palestinian flag up there, I'm going to stomp that motherfucker's head in because this is my goddamn country. You can do that shit somewhere the fuck else. But say whatever you want. Say whatever you want, support whomever you want, whatever the fuck. I don't care about any of that shit. That doesn't affect my life. And there's a reason there's an on-off switch on every device you have. It's because the ultimate fucking rebellion is to turn that shit off and not let it affect you instead of being a child and sitting around and whining about what somebody else thinks. Like, fuck off, man.
And as long as it's peaceful, again, if you're taking down the American flag in a country that we actually live in, if we went to, Palestine, and hung the American flag and tore theirs down, I'm sure there would be an uproar as well.
Well, it doesn't really exist anymore, so.
Yeah, it's getting close.
Yeah.
But before we get into it here, what actually made you become a Democrat?
Well, yeah, I think that's the right. What made you become a progressive? That's a better question, I think.
Yeah. So, when I came to the country, we were Republicans for a couple of reasons. So we were partly driven out of Turkey by communists. And so my dad was a farmer, no money, no electricity in his house, southeastern Turkey, as poor gets. And he worked his ass off, studied really hard. And in Turkey, back in the 1960s, they offered free college if you scored in the top 15, 20% in the entrance exams, right? So my dad did, and he got a spot as in the best school for mechanical engineering. And then when he got out, he came to America, got a master's degree at Hoboken in New Jersey, at Stevens, and then started his own business. And so Turks are so entrepreneurial. That's part of why we fit in America so well. It's kind of same mindset of let's go conquer the world, right? And let's go start our own business, do our own thing. So he did that in Turkey. Wound up building up a decent sized business, not like huge, but decent size. And at the time in 1978, there's a lot of like right left battles in Turkey. And the communists say, hey, capitalist pig, we're going to kill you and stuff. And my dad's like, fuck this, let's go to America, right? And then we get here, and he's running a small business here. And so when Reagan's talking about less regulation, and at the time, if you remember, taxes were 70%, the highest rate, right? And he's talking about bringing taxes down. My dad's like, yeah, that makes sense. I guess we're Republicans, right? And so that's how we started out. The rest of the story is too long. I'll just fast forward to when I leave, right? So throughout my life, I see Republicans claiming things that they don't really deliver on. So they say, oh, we want balanced budgets. But every time they come in, they pile up debt like crazy, right? Bill Clinton's the only one at that point that had brought down a deficit at all. And what I see over and over again is a lot of propaganda. But at the end of the day, the only thing that ever passes is tax cuts for corporations, tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts, right? So I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. They don't care about the debt. They don't care about any of this. They just want tax cuts for their donors, right? Then in 2003, Bush says we're going into Iraq. And I'm like, no, fuck this. I'm out. I kind of like George H.W. Bush saying, no, you're not allowed to attack another sovereign country. If you do, we come and kick your ass as we did for Iraq and Kuwait. But Bush did two things that were super principled that no one ever gives him credit for. George H.W. Bush, the senior, right? Number one, he said, we're not going into Iraq. Our job was to get him the fuck out of Kuwait, and that's all we're doing. That's because he said, if we're going to Iraq, it'll be a mess. He was 100% right, and that was the right thing to do. Don't get us entangled in that war that we don't need to be in. Number two was, even though he said, no tax increases, and read my lips, and that famous line, whether you agree with him or not, he had principles, and he said, look, I think the debt's out of control. I'm going to raise taxes because we got to get the debt under control. And to me, that was like, okay, that's principles. W comes in, he's like, fuck it, we're going into every country. Iraq didn't even attack us. Who cares? We're going into Iraq. Then they start torture. I'm like, torture's not American. Torture's the kind of shit that honestly, one of my cousins got arrested by the Turkish police back in the 1970s when stuff was going wrong, and they tortured him, right? Don't do that shit here in America. And then they just evolved. Warrantless wiretapping, Dick Cheney, all that, and still nonstop tax cuts for the rich, tax cuts for the rich. So I'm like, there's nothing left here. And so I went to the Democrats.
Well, I mean, the Democrats voted for all that too. Maybe not the tax cuts specifically.
Yeah.
But definitely the Patriot Act and Iraq and all that stuff, right? So I think, honestly, I'm curious about this. The left and right aren't a thing anymore. I mean, they are. It's just anybody that's involved in politics, federal politics at this point, is compromised in a way that blurs the line between what they are and are not supposed to be. So we need left and right, because left and right is mom and dad. We have empathy and nurturing, and we have responsibility and strength, right? Like this is the complement that exists all through nature, whether it's biological or social structures that exist. Even on fucking football teams, you have a head coach, and maybe the OC is a hard ass, but the head coach is the guy patting you on the back. There's always that fucking dichotomy, no matter where you see this, in the animal kingdom all the way up to us. We need that. But there is no, like, Republicans are not conservative in any traditional sense, right? Like, what exactly are they conserving? Maybe you could say they're conserving traditional values to some degree, at least in rhetoric. I don't think they actually do that. I think it's only in rhetoric. But financially, we haven't had a conservative Republican president since, I guess, Eisenhower, right? I mean, that's 70 fucking years. It's been a while.
Well, everybody's driving up the debts.
Yeah.
Every single president that gets in there.
Yeah, and you know, the Democrats are supposed to be classically liberal, which is to say supportive of free speech and so on, and they're not. Not as a party, I mean. So I guess the question is, and this is I said this on your show too, but the aristocracy will always protect itself before it will protect any particular political ideology or person or any of that shit. There's a big understanding gap. We have no civics education in high school anymore. And then when people get out of primary education, like if you're going to be a voter, if you were going to do anything else, if you were going to I'm going to become a fan of baseball. Mm-hmm. You know what you would do? You would watch some games and you would learn about the fucking rules. But I'm going to vote to control the lives of people around me. And it's like, fuck it. Facebook will tell me what to do. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I wonder, I think that you and I probably agree on a lot of first principles. But the question I want to ask is, how is it possible, because you would consider yourself a populist, right?
Oh, yeah.
So explain to me progressivism from a populist viewpoint, because I don't see how progressive ideas are accomplished without state power.
Yeah. All right. So let me break it down, a lot of that down. And there's so much agreement here. So first off, on the Democrats, you're totally right that they vote for all that stuff too. And that I drive my side crazy by pointing out, okay, so Bush and Cheney were terrible for voting for the Iraq War. That was the Republican Party. You're totally right about that. Okay, who else voted for the Iraq War? Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry. All of their presidents.
Everybody except for Barbara, whatever her name is in Oakland, whatever that congresswoman, and I can't remember.
Yeah, Barbara Lee. That was on
it. She was the only one that voted against it. Yeah, the first time. Anyway.
No, she's the only one that voted against Afghanistan. There were more votes, like Bernie and stuff, voted against the Iraq War. Right? But so they voted for the Iraq War because they thought it was politically convenient for them, military-industrial complex, etc. They voted for a lot of the tax cuts. Every greasy deal that helped the donors was Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden. Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden. Every single one of them. Okay. So I got no love for corporate Democrats. And you're right, Dan. It's these days, left-right still exists, but it's less about left-right as it is about populist versus establishment. Mm. So I'm against the establishment on our side. You guys are against the establishment on your side. We're both populists, so we agree on that. So how can a progressive be a populist, to answer your question? So there's two different parts of progressives, and this is super important for people to understand. There's the social issues where I think it's a mixed bag. You guys probably hate a lot of the things that some progressives say, and those are the culture wars, right? And so we can battle there, and sometimes we have to battle there, because when people say, hey, you know what, they come for different communities, I'm going to stand up for our communities, okay? And we could have that discussion, we could have that debate. But to me, honestly, that's the much less important part. And that's what they use to drive a wedge between us and get us to fight each other.
I mean, they're literally called wedge issues. Yep. Like, that's what they call them. Yep. Like, we're not supposed to be like, wait, what? You're trying to do what?
Yeah, it is an issue. Yeah.
Exactly, Dad. Exactly. I mean, they're so brazen. They just fucking named it what they're doing. We're creating a wedge between you guys so you never realize the real problem's up top. Who has all the power? Like, even look, so you can get mad at immigrants, and I think we should have a better way of bringing in more legal immigrants, but I hear you guys on the border, blah, blah, blah. But the brown guy who crossed the border a second ago has no money in his pocket. He's not the one controlling shit, right? It's the guys up top that have all the money and the power that are making the decisions. It's the donors that run everything. So when you look at the economic side of progressives, that's where the populism is, right? So that's Bernie Sanders 2016. He got a little bit more progressive on the social issues in 2020, and it hurt him, right, in my opinion, right? But in pure Bernie 2016 was exactly what we should have done. And I've had tons of Trump supporters say, I would have voted for that guy. So why? Number one, higher wages for the average American. Like, they say, oh, let's give tax cuts to corporations, and then it'll trickle down on you like they're pissing on us, right? No, how about we go for higher wages right now for the average American, and then maybe it'll trickle up to you motherfuckers, okay? So that's point one. Point two is deliver for the American people with things like paid family leave. So that's 12 weeks off for moms after they have a baby. We're almost the only country in the whole world that doesn't have it. We don't realize how much corporate donors have taken over politics completely. It's crazy that moms can't take 12 weeks off after having a baby. Right wing agrees, left wing agrees. 84% of Americans agree. And then the Democrats go, oh, we agree too. But golly, gee, we cannot find a way to pass a bill that's 84% of Americans are in favor of. well, then you suck at politics.
Well, solved problems don't get out the vote, Cenk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But meanwhile, let's look at the Republicans. Republicans are like, paid family leave. No fucking way.
Well, who paid by whom, I guess, is the question I would ask, because we're business owners here. Obviously, you're a business owner. Why should I have to pay for somebody else's time off?
Yeah, so that's where we've done this. We, as in the world, has done this literally hundreds of times, Dan. And every country that's done it loves it. It's a combination of taxes and from businesses and from individuals, of course, because the government needs resources. But if you take the taxes and you throw it away on wars, I hate it. You take the taxes and you build roads, bridges, and deliver for Americans and say, yeah, no, that mom is not going back to the assembly line or the coal mines the next day. That's a thing that we can all live with. So, for example, Social Security, partly paid by employers, partly paid by taxes coming out of the employees, but we love it. Super popular program. Social Security and Medicare are the two most popular programs. Progressive, populist positions. That's why the country loved FDR. That's why he won 4 times. Universal health care. Look, cops protect us. Fire department, defense protects us. It's a core government function. Right wing definitely agrees with that. Well, what does healthcare do? It keeps us alive. 68,000 Americans die every year because they don't have health insurance. Again, no other developed nation does that. We live under corporate rule, so the populist left wants to fight back against corporate rule and actually deliver for the average American.
Okay, so I'm going to take these in reverse order. I'll start with healthcare because we don't have healthcare. We have sick care, and we have the Affordable Care Act, which is essentially just a handout to private insurance companies who have been raping the fuck out of our healthcare industry for as long as they've existed, right? Particularly since 2011, since this went into effect. Certainly people die, and I think that it is immoral for a country to tell its citizens that you can be as healthy as you can afford to be. Not only is it immoral, that's fucking stupid, right? I mean, human capital that is what makes America truly great. The things that defend us are certainly 3,000 miles of standoff with 2 oceans, all the natural resources we have, blah, blah, blah. And the idea of America is also very valuable. But the human capital here is our most important asset. It always will be and always has been, always will be. So yeah, I think paid family leave is a good idea, right? I'm not sure how you adjudicate that specifically. Or let me rephrase that. I think taking care of people who need to be taken care of is a good idea. Certainly. Making sure that wages are commensurate with market costs and stuff like that is just smart economics. I think everybody would agree about that. The thing that we're going to disagree on is how to do it. I don't think the federal government is a solution to any of this shit, and the evidence is in, is it not? I mean, if you want the government in charge of something, that's going to be a real tough sell for anybody that's paying attention to what's been going on for the last 60 years in this country and how they have increased our debt, how they've gotten us into wars, and how the basic things, they're incompetent. They can't do it. Katrina was almost 20 years ago now, and we just had a replay of it with Helene in Western North Carolina. I've never seen as much incompetence in my life, and we have people on the ground out there rebuilding people's businesses and shit. It is, I think this is the primary difference between us. Because it isn't we quote these polls all the time, like, 80% of people support this or support that. It's mostly true. People are good for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. They live lives, they experience negative things, and they're like, well, I don't want other people to experience those negative things either. You develop empathy as a human being unless you're fucked in the head. But handing over the reins of it to government so they can tax us and tax us and tax us and spend they never use the money for what they're supposed to. They don't use the money to rebuild. Our infrastructure hasn't been touched in 65 years in any major way. They don't use it for that. So this idea that if we got rid of the federal government, that we just wouldn't have roads anymore, well, our roads are fucked up now. You know what I mean? This is the primary disagreement between my side and your side, is that the government simply cannot be trusted to do this. And the problem from the Republican side or the conservative or libertarian side is the stuff still has to get done, that's for sure. And the people, and I think this is why it's such a hard sell for the progressive left, because the people on the right simply haven't done their jobs. They haven't stepped up. We talk about fatherless homes being the number one predictor of crime. Well, who are you mentoring, right? Like, did you go into those communities and help? at all, or are you just going to bitch about it and blame Democrats? It's like, no. At some point, if you want the government, I say this all the time, solve problems yourself with your community before the government gets there. Because if they show up and nobody's got their hand out, they don't have any power there. And that should be everybody's goal, every community's goal, no matter what part of the political spectrum you're on. So again, I'll bring it back. We just don't trust the government to do these things. You know what I mean? Not like some ephemeral, the government, the man, big brother, or anything, but the type of people who go work in government are usually good people. They're not assholes or anything, but just the weight of it. Something about the gravity of government, the bureaucracy, layers and layers and layers of it. It's a tax on people, essentially, right? Mm-hmm. That's really what it is, because they're so incompetent that it costs 60 to 80% more to get them to fucking do anything. So why should we use that system?
So, Dan, let me tackle that, because I don't even know if we have disagreement. We might, though. So, look, it depends on what you mean by government. Because if you're talking about government as it currently is, this system sucks. And the reason that it sucks is because the Supreme Court back in 76 and 78 basically legalized bribery. You can give infinite campaign contributions. So, of course, what's Raytheon going to do? They're going to capture the government. And by the way, if you're a business owner like I am, I get it, man. If it turns out the U.S. government is for sale, you'd be a sucker not to buy it. And a lot of these congressmen, you'd be surprised how cheap they are, man. You could buy them for $5,000. And so you give them a little bit of money for their campaigns, and they're going to give you everything you want. So that has really poisoned the well against the idea of government being able to solve anything, because this current government is so corrupt that they'll say things like, oh, half the defense budget, we don't know where the money went. That's $400 billion. And
they haven't balanced the budget since 2001, you know. They failed every audit. They failed every audit since 2001, the DOD.
Every audit.
What the fuck?
That's right. And they won't let you audit the Fed, et cetera, right? So that's this government. But was there a government in America that worked? Absolutely. Look at the 1938 to 1978. 40 golden years of America. And in fact, when Trump says let's make America great again, a lot of Americans think of that era where we were great. And they're right. We were. We created the greatest middle class that the world has ever seen. We had the greatest military. We had the greatest government programs. We started making sure that the rest of the world had less and less wars. We were amazing. Why? Because we didn't have legalized bribery. So it's not like the government can't do anything right. Government also has cops. Cops are government, right? Fire department's government. Sometimes you need government to do stuff. Like, great example, we used to have a privatized fire departments in America back in the day.
Police as well. And what happened until the early part of the 20th century, we had privatized police.
Yeah. And that's a disaster.
It was,
and so they learned that the hard way, because the guy next to you didn't have fire insurance. His house burned down. Guess what happened? Your house burned down. So, and they realized, okay, wait. We got to pull our resources here together and work as a community. And that's what's, quote unquote, government at its best, is when it represents the community, when it's of the people, by the people, for the people. You cannot do it without government. There is no other function, because the only other way to do it is to hope that corporations do the right thing. But there is no such thing. Corporations have only one rule: maximize profit. So, for example, they are rebuilding roads and bridges now. Biden passed the infrastructure bill. But what they didn't tell Democrats is, wait a minute, a lot of that stuff is in league with private companies, and then they're going to privatize some of your roads, and then you got to pay tolls where tolls didn't exist before. Oh, no, I didn't ask for that. I asked to spend our community money on roads and bridges, right? I didn't ask for tolls. So that's what I mean by we got to get our government back. We can't have anarchy. We can't have chaos. We need some function of the government to work. But the key is honest government and not the out of control corruption we have.
I just don't see how you get it. I mean, I'll go back to what you said about healthcare earlier. Have you had Obamacare? Like, do you have it personally?
No, I haven't had it, but guys, so Obamacare is one giant advantage and one giant disadvantage. And the giant advantage was taking away the,
pre-existing conditions.
Pre-existing conditions. And that was corporate rule at its worst.
Yep.
We're just going to make money off of you, but the minute you get sick, we're going to dump you, right? And Democrats and Republicans both agreed to it. Corporate Democrats, corporate Republicans, they love that shit. But people got so mad that was one of the few things Obama did right, because it was kind of a release valve. Let some pressure out. Let some pressure out because corporate rules getting too much. But on the other hand, it had the mandate. And what's the mandate? The mandate says you must buy from private health insurers. Mm-hmm. Well, what the fuck? I mean, how is that left wing? That's not left wing at all to say you must buy from private corporations, right? That is corruption coming back in. And what else did they do? They left the drug companies alone, because the drug companies would have killed that bill if we said negotiate drug prices.
Not just the drug companies, but also
market?
the at the time, Roe was law of the land, and I had probably half a dozen friends quit the Obama campaign in 2012 after he capitulated to the Catholics on that, right? Where and for better or worse, I don't really give a shit about that issue, frankly, but yeah, a lot of people kind of tuned out after that, and it just went to like there is again a fine line between negotiation and compromise, right? Because there's disparate ideas and trying to find a middle way that works, and just being a corporate bitch, right? Which is what everybody in Washington D.C. is. There's corporate bitches. And you know,
most correct thing anybody's ever said.
Yeah, and in days past, and I've said this many times over the years, but it's reasonable to appear liberal or leftist, whatever you want to call it, when conservatives are out of control, and it's reasonable to appear conservative when leftists are out of control. But now both of these motherfuckers are out of control, and I'm not sure what reasonable is anymore. I think it would be really smart of us to press pause on all these manufactured partisan issues and gut this government down to the bone, right? And restore a little bit of normalcy. Forget about the candidates that are involved here. I don't give a shit about any of these people. It's the way that we interact with government that matters. What we accept from them and what we don't. Like, here's a good example of, because a lot of people want to talk rhetoric and, oh, fucking, there's a civil war coming. One, there's not. That's fucking stupid. Nobody's going to war. That's dumb. But two, that's the mentally weakest position you can take. Here's why. There are 330 to 350 million of us and about 10,000 people that matter in fucking federal government, right? That is to say the electeds, then all their bureaucrats. When you have this is just fucking, you can read this in Sun Tzu, but when you have an overwhelming majority, using maximum force doesn't make any fucking logistical sense. You don't have to do that. And I've mentioned this many times before, but this is the example of how just saying no collectively is the most powerful thing that people can do together. And it's the Governance Disinformation Board, this DHS thing that they try to stand up with this lunatic woman who, by the way, is doing the exact same job for the British government now, for the UK. They wanted to establish a Department of Homeland Security division that censored people on the internet. And everybody on the right and everybody on the left was like, nah, we're not doing that. Fuck that. And that woman was fired and disgraced 2 weeks later. That's all you got to do. Wade through all this stupid bullshit that doesn't affect your day-to-day life and say, hey, I know you're a fucking Yankees fan and I'm a Mets fan, but we both like baseball. And fuck these people. Fuck the Phillies. You know what I mean? Or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's like, it just irritates the shit out of me that people get down these rabbit holes and they hate people they've never met. And they're either garbage or deplorables, or they're Nazis, or they're fucking, there's Marxists. Like, the average Democratic voter is not a fucking Marxist. As a matter of fact, they don't even know what Marxism is.
That's so
God
true.
damn it.
And same with Republicans. We're not all fucking Nazis at the end of the day.
No.
For me, I'm just looking at some of the core issues here. And somebody brought this up to me in the past of, if you really sat down and talked to somebody and had a conversation like we're having today, you probably only disagree on 2 or 3 issues. And that's kind of what every election's over here.
Same thing with race, too. That's why there's such a plurality of different folks, a different, I guess you could say, a cohort voting for Trump now, whereas these groups typically wouldn't. It's just, and whether they're right or wrong, time will tell, but they just see Trump as somebody who's more likely to give them the ability to buy food, for example, right? Mm-hmm. It really does come down to just one key issue for some people sometimes. Yeah. And survival is a pretty attractive issue.
Yeah, and I think in the midterms in 2022, I think it really did come down to abortion. When that was overturned, there was supposed to be a red wave that did not happen because of that issue of what the Supreme Court decided to do. But for me, over time, like I was one of those small business owners that was forced to have Obamacare. They made a mandate. It was over 30 employees. That if they worked more than 30 hours a week, everybody had to have Obamacare. Great. I cut back everybody's hours. Then I was forced to go on Obamacare. They said I wouldn't lose my doctor. Guess what? My doctor kicked me out after a year. I was not happy with it. I understood the pre-existing conditions and all that other stuff, and that part was great. But then slowly over time, it eroded. It's pretty goddamn expensive now, and it's hard to find the doctors either way. And I think, over the course of, let's say the last, 10 years now is when it's really gotten heated politically, because you have these things that people really do care about and they are fighting for, and then there's more platforms to get it out there and be more vocal about it. For me, yes, you got to fix the healthcare system one way or the other. I haven't heard it out of Trump what he wants to do as far as fixing it. I don't know what you can do in a country of 330 million people here at this point.
This repeal and replace shit has been going on since 2012.
Yes.
And the Republicans haven't even drafted anything that makes any sense about it. So, look, you can, and I'm with you. If you want to make the argument that the ACA sucks and that it needs to be replaced, 100% with you. But so fucking write something that makes sense. It's really, you've got a whole staff, bud. You've got fucking Americans for Prosperity out there writing model legislation. You've got all these assholes out here paying legislators to take the stuff that their private organization wrote and turn it into law in the United States. And you can't figure out one healthcare system. Really?
Yeah.
And look, these issues, including immigration, by the way, are not that difficult. One of my master's thesis was on this, specifically, the difference between the U.S.-Mexico border and the Germany-Poland border. I've talked about it here before. U.S.-Mexico is fucked from before NAFTA to NAFTA and so on. All these things, everything we've done with regard to the Mexican border has sucked. All Trump did was shut it down for a little while, but that didn't really solve anything. It temporarily did, but you could see all that could be undone in with the snap of a finger, right? Yeah. On day one, it could be undone.
Yes.
So they didn't really solve anything. What Germany did, so they had a big problem with Polish workers coming over the border, working, not paying taxes, and then fucking back off to Poland. So here's what they did. They issued pretty much anybody that could pass a low-level background check, you get a federal work permit to come into Germany. You can come in every day, work, and go back home, do whatever you want. And they put the onus on the business owner, right? If you're a business owner and you get caught employing an illegal Polish guy, you don't get fined. Your business is done. Liquidated, you lose everything, right? Mm-hmm. All your shit gets sold and you're out of business forever. Fuck you, right? That's what matters. Consequences matter. That these issues are not unsolvable. They just don't have the fucking balls to do it. And it's because what you said in the 70s, it started, Citizens United codified it into law. You can do whatever the fuck you want to if you've got enough money here. That's how it is, right? And that's not a fucking republic in the way that we want it to be. It's not a federalist republic. It doesn't reflect our understanding of democracy in any way that we've developed over the last, let's say, 1,000 years in the West. It is simply a pay-for-play plutocracy. We cannot allow this shit to continue. It doesn't matter who the candidates are and all that shit. That's all a distraction. Fuck all that. Right? This government has to go in its current form. It just has to go.
Now, that's why I'm voting for Trump. That's one of the bigger issues for me personally. I'm with you on the government. The only person that I've heard say I want less government is Trump. In particular, he said I want Elon to be in control of it and kind of do what he did with Twitter, which is now X, and eliminate 90% of it. Now, he did that at Twitter. They said it would fail. It's still the same site. I've not had any problems. I don't know if you have on your ends. And actually, the video quality is phenomenal over there. That is the only candidate who wants to shrink government that I've heard from so far. What is the position for you in regards to Kamala? Because it sounds like you want the same thing of a smaller federal government.
Yeah. So there's so much to say here, and I got to go at the top of the hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fine.
So let me try to squeeze all this in as quickly as I can. So first of all, I'll save the agreement to the end. Okay, let's finally do some disagreement. So look, I'm not disagreeing on Kamala Harris, and I'm gonna the day before the election on Monday, I'll probably do. That's when I'll probably start it. But definitely on election day, we're going to cover it on the Young Turks the whole day. And I'm going to start a populist revolt. And so, and the reason I'm doing it before the election is I don't care if Kamala Harris or Donald Trump wins. I don't think either one of them is going to deliver shit for the average American. And so, I don't want people thinking, oh, Johnny come lately, oh, because Trump won, you're saying this or whatever. I don't know who's going to win. And I'm telling you right now, I don't care. We've got to start a populist revolt. So the part we might disagree on is, and I'm going to ask people to sign a petition. I don't care if you're right, left, instead of the left will say, oh, you don't bring in right wingers. We'll cancel you, whatever. I've been canceled a million times. I don't care. These guys are all crooks. And so if you want to break down any piece of legislation, I'll come back on here and I'll show you exactly how corporations are controlling both sides. So like on healthcare, the Republicans have this bullshit plan. The only plan they've ever said, Dan, you're 100%. They almost have no plan at all. Trump says, I've got concepts of a plan. Brother, it's been 10 years. Put together a fucking plan, right? The only thing that the Republicans ever say is, oh, we let the states decide, but we'll deregulate. It sounds good. Oh, we don't want too much regulation. No, it's a trick. So because like Delaware did with corporations, they'll find the state that have the most lax laws. All the insurance companies will get headquartered there. And what they'll say is, we're going to deliver the least amount of health care for you guys for the highest price. It's a trap, right? On immigration, why do things not get fixed? Because corporate power says, especially big agriculture, I want cheaper labor. And if you guys fix it, then I'm going to have to pay them minimum wage. I'm going to have to pay them, fair market wages. But now I got leverage because they're undocumented. So it's not an accident that it's not getting fixed permanently. Dan, you're totally right about that. It's because corporations are making sure it doesn't get fixed, mainly through corporate Republicans, but also through corporate Democrats too. So the part we disagree on is Trump. So I grant you everything about Kamala. The donors control her and every establishment Democrat, and I'm sick of it. I can't stand it anymore. But when you go turn to Trump, he has the same donors and more. And the one upside of Trump is he just spews out whatever's in his head, and he can't help himself. So he'll just admit things over and over. And in a rally, he'll go, I was against electric vehicles, but Elon gave me a strong endorsement, which by means like about $100 million, right? So he's like, now I'm for electric vehicles. Dude, you just told me you're corrupt. And he says, well, I was against TikTok. And it's true. He was trying to ban TikTok when he was president. And then Jeff Yaz gave me a strong endorsement. That's a couple of $1 million Jeff Yaz, 15% owner of TikTok, gave him. He's like, so now I'm for TikTok. Brother, you're admitting the corruption. You're saying it out loud, right? Then he's got Miriam Adelson giving him $90 million. She's a hard right-wing Israeli, not right-wing American. Like, she's an American citizen, but she supports the right wing of Israel, which is very different than the right wing of America. And that's the government that's saying, oh, more war, more war.
Yeah,
more
Netanyahu
pressure.
tried to shut down their Supreme Court system. That's what was going on the week before October 7th. I always like to remind people that.
And Sheldon Adelson, her late husband, gave him $100 million in 2016 and $100 million in 2020. And Trump said, well, I moved the embassy because Sheldon gave me so much money. Dude, you're not supposed to give away our foreign policy to a donor. So, there's so many problems with Trump that the right wing sometimes I feel can't see because we're in our state of war at all times. And they go, yeah, what about Kamala? What about Kamala? And no other Democrat can actually get through and talk to people about the things that Trump are doing wrong because they bullshit you about how Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are angels. And that they're not when they take corporate money, they don't get affected by it. Bullshit. Of course they do, right? But Trump takes the corporate money, and what did he do? The one major piece of legislation, giant corporate tax cuts. And this time around, he says, oh, yeah, as soon as I get in, another round of giant corporate tax cuts. Plus, on top of that, whoever gave me money, I'll just do whatever the hell they want. So fake populists can't stand him. Talked about terminating the Constitution. That's real. He wrote it himself on True Social. Talking about enemy from within. No, I don't like Biden saying, MAGA guys are garbage. I don't like Trump saying enemy from within and I'm going to use the military. Those are not conservative positions. So that's why I'm against.
The enemy from within, to be clear, is anybody that works in Washington, D.C., just in case anybody's curious about that. I will say this for Trump.
But Dan, even then, we're not going to use the military against. As much as I hate the establishment, we're not using the military against them.
No, certainly not. There's a posse comitatus act that prevents that from happening. Trump did sign the Antitrust Criminal Penalty Enforcement Reform Permanent Extension Act, which is the largest piece of antitrust legislation in 50 years. To be honest, that's the only thing that anybody's done recently And to your point about you agree on a lot of the end state that we're going, that we all want here. You just don't think that Trump's the guy to do it. And maybe you're right. I just think from the Trump supporters' perspective, and look, maybe it's just good marketing. I don't think it is. I think it's with the team that he's putting around him now. It's people that want to tear this government down, and not America, the government. It's not the same thing, to be clear, right? I think we all agree on that. That's a very attractive thing for people. You know what I mean? And to be frank, it's not like he can do anything worse than any of these other motherfuckers have been doing. So it's a pretty easy decision for most people. Like shit sucks right now, and people will naturally think back to the last time when shit didn't suck, which is just a few years ago when he was a president. I mean, it's going to be a hard sell to convince anybody to vote for Kamala Harris, frankly.
It is, and I know you've got to get out of here, and we appreciate your time, and obviously thank you for having us on your show last week. At what point did you turn, because you were a left network, at what point did you turn to this populist movement that, hey, we need to get all these guys out of here and focus on what is actually good for the country? Because I've said this on the show forever, that we need almost another document next to the Constitution that just says America first. When did that turn for you, and what do you think your listeners and your subscribers are going to think?
Yeah, I don't think we turned at all. So, but let me explain what I mean by that, because I think that some portion of the extreme left turned on us. And so, I mean, I've been a populist from day one. I started Wolfpack to get money out of politics now 13 years ago, wolf-pack.com. It's totally nonpartisan, right wing, left wing. We hate the corruption, etc. So I've been doing this for a long time, always anti-corruption, populist, etc. What do I mean by some of the extreme left turned on us? So we wanted to do police reform because cops were beating up too many people, shooting too many people. By the way, one of the worst videos we ever showed was a white guy that they killed in a hotel room on his hands and knees, begging them not to kill him. And a guy just shoots him.
He was
I'm
just
like,
drunk.
what the fuck?
He was drunk.
Yeah.
Unarmed.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that's tyrannical government in a sense. And so we wanted to reform that. And all of a sudden they passed these bills where they made some felonies into misdemeanors, including like domestic assault. Like, wait a minute, we didn't agree to that. As progressives, we want to protect women. Why would we want to take a domestic assault and make it from a felony to a misdemeanor? And then, so I'm like, no, I'm not in favor of that. And then they're like, okay, in order to be pure left, you have to agree that transgender people, I'm 100% for transgender rights. I think they should have equality and justice. I believe that. But if you say to me, no, a professional sports league should not be able to make its own decision on whether to include them in their league or not, the government should mandate that transgender people be able to play in women's leagues. No, that's for the leagues to decide. And so I never agreed to that. I don't know where you came up with this agenda. I don't know where we voted on this agenda. And if you ask Democratic voters and you take some of the extreme left positions, 98% of Democratic voters don't want it. So it's just like this small group rose up online and pretended to represent all progressives, everyone on the left. Like, here's my most famous example, and I'm on the record on all this all the way back in the day, okay? The minute it popped up. Latinx. They're like, okay, now we're going to call everybody Latinx. I'm like, what the fuck? When did we vote on this? I don't know a single Latino that says Latinx, and I think you guys made that shit up like yesterday, right? And they're like, how dare you? We're canceling you. You have to say Latinx. I'm like, I'm not going to say it because I think it's bullshit, and I don't think Latinos want it. And then they did a poll. 96% of Latinos don't want it. I told you. It's not just that the right wing doesn't want it. Latinos don't want it. So, and by the way, guys, why did the extreme left get amplified so much that you think it's the whole left? Wedge issues.
Yeah, there's a
the
reason
minute they
that
got
the phrase...
one dude saying something radical, they drive a wedge between us.
But it's always the loudest voices that make the most amount of damage,
well,
and that we report on.
Yeah, but you capitalize on that. I mean, that's retarded, to be honest. Just think about they admit they're doing this when they call it a wedge issue. If somebody's trying to divide you, they're trying to conquer you. That's why the fucking phrase exists. It's, oh my God, man. Like, do you really think that there are people out there in their homes twisting their mustaches? Well, we're going to get that tax money.
Yeah.
And fucking...
It'll be in the mailbox tomorrow. I can't wait for it.
No, people are trying to fucking feed their families.
Exactly. Cenk, I'll let you get out of here. I know you're a busy guy, so are we, obviously, with the election coming up. Do you have any prediction? Like, what is your gut telling you?
Yeah, so normally I always have a prediction. And because by this time, for sure, usually much earlier, you can tell from A, the polling, but B, also trends, how they're running their campaigns, et cetera. Like, I called the Obama-Romney election 6 weeks ahead of time. And people are like, oh, you're crazy. You don't know. I'm like, no, Obama's killing this guy. It's not going to be close, right? And then in 2016, I said Trump's going to win on ABC's This Week. The whole Stephanopoulos and the whole panel laughed out loud. They're like, right? I'm like, he's a populist. And I think he's a fake populist, but at least he's trying. And America hates the establishment. They're like, no, America loves the establishment. And I'm like, all right, see what happens. But now I got one poll going this way. I got another poll going that way. I got unlikely voters on Trump's side historically, but I got unlikely voters coming out for Democrats on abortion in 2022 and 2023, and I think for Kamala Harris. So there is no way of knowing. But just because it's super close and there's no way of knowing doesn't mean it won't be a blowout. Because all somebody has to do is get like a 1.5, 2-point lead in the swing states, and they win them all. Mm-hmm. So Trump could easily win all the swing states. I think it's a little less likely for Kamala to win all the swing states, but in fact, she can. I think Nevada and North Carolina are probably gone for Trump already, and maybe Arizona too. But so Trump is the more likely on the blowout, but she could still easily win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin and win the race. So that's why it's hard to know.
Yeah. Well,
do you think we get the answer on Tuesday night?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I don't think the states that are reporting that they're going to be late, I don't think are going to matter, to be honest. Like Minnesota's one of them, Michigan's another one. That like those states are not going for Trump under any circumstances. I don't care how many Muslims are pissed off about the AIPAC bullshit. They're not. Those states are not going for Trump anyway. So,
well, you're covering it as well. Do you think you were going to get an answer that night, Cenk?
My gut says that we're going to get an answer. Look, I, as you know, and as I've stated, I don't like Trump. I think he's a fraud. I can't stand him. So last Sunday, not this past Sunday, but about 10 days ago, I had this feeling of doom that came over me, the same exact feeling I had right before the 2016 election, like, oh, shit, I think Trump's going to win, right?
Yeah.
So my intuition is a little bit towards Trump, even though I don't want him to win. But Kamala could win, especially given the last set of polls and election results in 22 and 23. Having said that, it could be over in an hour, because if Trump wins Pennsylvania, which is totally possible, it's over. And Trump's the president. So if Kamala wins Pennsylvania, it's not over, right? But if Trump does, it's over. And so all of this, oh my God, it's going to go on for weeks and months. No, it could be over in 1 hour and we're done.
Yeah, I agree. I said the same thing here, that if Pennsylvania falls early in the evening, that's it. I think it's over.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I'll see you on Election Day. I'm going to pop out. We're doing our own live election show, but I'm going to pop out for a bit and come on your guys, and we'll get this this populist revolt started. We'll do a fucking 1525 surf rebellion all over again and see how that goes.
Now that's my kind of language, man. I love that, brother. Let's go into corruption.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here. We greatly appreciate it. D'Anthony, I'll ask you. Obviously we're 6 days away here at this point. Any trends that you've noticed or heard anything on the inside from your side?
Yeah, I mean, usually when Democrats are going to win an election, they're up by 4 more points, and they're not. They're losing in pretty much what Cenk is saying is accurate. Those key battleground states, Arizona, which to be honest could have gone either way, but it's pretty solid red at the moment. Nevada's another one where it looks like it's going pretty well, and North Carolina as well. It looks like it's going pretty well, despite having. This is how you know people are pissed. By the way, it's still confused. I still don't understand what happened in North Carolina, because those polls flipped pretty quickly. I don't know if people just.
It was the hurricane. I'm telling you, because my parents are there.
Yeah, it may be because people are fucking pissed.
It was the hurricane response. My family's there. They're actually flying in today, and the early voter turnout there was. Another record that was set, but a lot of it was those pissed off people from the hurricane coming in and voting there. a lot of them, I mean, some of them were walking, because you've helped out up there with Save Our Allies and all that stuff. Some of them were walking for miles just to get there because they were angry about what had happened to their states. So I don't think North Carolina is even on the board for Democrats anymore.
Maybe that's it, yeah. And then, in Pennsylvania, I just feel like the Harris campaign has really fucked up. Like, Trump and Vance have just been in Pennsylvania for the last week and a half or so. They'll pop out and do another event somewhere, but they just keep coming back to do shit in Pennsylvania.
Vance is doing Rogan as we speak.
Yeah, Vance
and
is.
Then he's flying
in Austin. He's going back to Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And Trump's got a fucking rally tonight in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
I don't know if you saw the smoke on that. We'll talk about it on a fake news tomorrow once the rally's done and see how it goes and everything. We'll talk about that later. The mayor tried to fuck him over in that city, but the Harris campaign, they're doing fucking concerts in Texas. Where she doesn't even perform.
Yeah.
Beyonce, I mean. It's like, I feel like they're fucking up so badly that it's hard to take them seriously at this point, frankly. So, yeah, to me, Trump's going to win this on election night in a landslide.
Yeah, I think the same thing. And for me, when I look at, let's take the Beyonce events, it was in conjunction with Allred, who is, running against Cruz here. And we've been told that it is close. I don't know, and I don't believe the fucking polls.
No, it's not. It's not close.
But let's say it's not. What I think, because you think they're punting. I don't think that they were punting necessarily, the Democrats. I think that they know they're behind, and now she's just trying to help out down ballot candidates. Because otherwise, there's just simply no other reason to be in Texas with Allred at an event. And then Beyonce not singing is a whole nother can of fucking worms, but it's odd. And I've said this, I think if Pennsylvania drops, it will be a very, very early evening, and we can party and have a good time then. But to the people in the chat today who were saying, man, I thought you guys were going to scream at each other or yell in each other's faces about shit, I think there's a lot more people like you and Cenk, for example, who are in the middle, hate the government, and want to see something new and try to change it. For me, I didn't really pay attention to politics until Obama, to when shit really started to affect my life as a small business owner, and that was the Obamacare thing that I mentioned. Then I started to pay attention a little more. 2008 with Bush. I didn't like Bush either, where it was just like, God damn it, man. I had my business then. Almost lost everything. It fucking sucked. And then the Obamacare thing and everything else. And with Trump on this show, if you guys are day one homies to this show, I just thought it would be fun to see who wins. Like, hey, what would happen if Donald Trump, a reality star, got in? Would the country be okay? Could we move forward with all these ideas and everything else? And for those 4 years, it was fucking great for us. And then the last 4 years have not been great for us. And when I say us, I mean us as a family, as small business owners, and that's why I'm voting for who I'm voting for this election. But I think at home, if you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, I think you're going to start to see a lot more people that are moving towards the middle, who want to get rid of more of this government, and they're sick of what is going on both sides. Because as you saw and you heard earlier, you can certainly point out issues on both sides.
Yeah.
And to your points that you said, which is the biggest overall factor in this entire election, is you have 4 years of Trump versus 4 years of Kamala already. What was good, what was bad, and I think that's what people are voting for at the end of the day in this election.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that the aristocracy is most afraid of is everybody realizing that they're full of shit. And everybody has realized that they're full of shit, I think. There's still stragglers out there. People are just trying to, they're trying to figure out now how to deal with it, I think. And a lot of people are like, well, and you look at it, not that she's a political outsider, but demographically she is. She's a woman that's not white, right? That's two things that aren't typical in federal politics. So maybe some people's brains just go there. I don't know. But it seems like, and I've been saying this for years on this show, the differences between you and your neighbor, even if you have disparate politics, are far smaller than the differences between you and the people that are making decisions that control your life. And if you can't put aside those differences temporarily and fuck these people up, then you're going to get the government you fucking deserve. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. And that's what we have right now. In a republic or in a democratic society or whatever the fuck you want to call it, you will always get the government you deserve. Unless there's an authoritarian forcing you at gunpoint to do shit, then you get the government you deserve. It's cowardice to not put yourself out there on the line. Even if it's a violent situation, I still think that's cowardly. But especially now when it's just, man, whatever it costs you to be a good man, it's worth it, right? Doesn't matter what it costs. If it's your job, your fucking friends, whatever, it's worth it. And if you're not willing to commit to that, to first principles, to being a good man first, then we all lose. Yep. This is the way it is, man. It doesn't matter how fucking noble anybody's intentions are. Assholes are going to run the government and run us into the ground. So that's like, I don't give a fuck about talking to people that think differently than me. And if you do, then you're fucking mentally weak, frankly.
We appreciate you tuning in, kids. Did the internet kick out here?
Yes, it did.
God damn it, man.
Yeah, the first time in months.
Yep. So this is the first time we've gone live on YouTube with Drinkin' Bros, and because we were banned for 7 days, and magically we have two political people here on the show going at it. The internet kicks out. It's a miracle.
We'll re-upload. We'll be better. We'll be stronger.
We'll put it out tonight. Jesus Christ. Will we? I mean, this isn't a fucking coincidence at this point. Now is the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week. Bob, pull it up on drinkinbros.com. We got some merch over there. That's also where you can submit for Drinkin' Bro of the Week. And guess what, kids? The Bro Box is better than ever. It was one of my favorite shirts here. I showed it on the show when you were gone the other day, but this is one of my favorite Bro Boxes we've ever had this month. Subscribe to the Bro Box.
Which one? The
beer one over there.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one. Did you show the people?
I did. Yeah. I showed them on Monday's show, and we've also got the new NIL merch. I told you we just signed with Penn State for Hard AF Seltzer. The hoodies are up there. The hats are up there.
And before you ask, we won't be at Penn State until next year.
Correct.
I mean, like
March.
The booze, but also us personally. We're not traveling up there, obviously, until it goes live. What would be the point? So
right.
Maybe we'll go to the spring game.
Well, a lot of people asking. Obviously, we usually go to Penn State, Ohio State together every year. It's a noon game this year, and we've got the big election show that is coming up.
And it's also not
Tuesday.
the whiteout game.
It's not the whiteout game. They moved that to the week after because Fox has to have their bullshit big noon game. Noon games should be against the law. If a presidential candidate ran on that, I'd fucking vote for him alone. So we won't be there for that. But we will be here for the election nights. And you can join us at WTF Downtown Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. We'll be live at 7 p.m. when the polls close. Drink in there earlier, though. Please go out and vote. Vote early. Don't even push it for the day. Just go out and vote early and then join us. And we'll be live on YouTube and Twitter, hopefully. We'll see if they don't shut down that stream as well. On that drinkinbros.com page, you'll see the Drinkin' Bros submission there. It gets emailed to us live on air. I will read that now. Oh, we got a bunch of them that just came in. Wow. Okay. This one was submitted by Chris Creamy. Hope that's a real name. Find out.
Creamy?
Yeah, from Virginia.
I don't think that's real. I mean, Virginia is real, obviously, but Chris Creamy, that's not a real name.
Chris Creamy is real. Listener for 8 years, wants to nominate Larry Christopher, who's living. This is for my dad, a 23-year Navy vet who recently had a stroke and a heart attack, and he's fighting his way back. He's the best father and husband and hardworking man I have ever known. The world needs more real men like this. A man who took care of my family, community, and then myself. Cheers. Since a bunch of them came in at the same time, I'll read one more here. This is John McKee, New York, listener for 2 years, is nominating John P. McKee, who is deceased. Says, I want to nominate my father, John P. McGee, who is a true American hero and who passed away from 9/11 related illnesses. My father was a deputy chief of police for the City University of New York and responded and worked at Ground Zero for over a month. He would have loved this podcast, and he was a true drinking bro. Cheers. Cheers to you guys. And we appreciate you tuning in. Is the Twitter feed still going?
No, so the Twitter feed went out like 12 times.
Great.
So anytime you see it like kind of like buffer a little bit,
Yeah.
the Twitter feed starts a new feed. So I'll upload on both.
Okay.
Yeah, the internet speeds are not great right now.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? It's weird how it works here. But I enjoyed this conversation today, and I enjoyed this show.
It's what I've been saying to you people for 5 or so years now. It's that dude is not your enemy. You may think differently and come to different fucking conclusions, but that's not the enemy. Mm-hmm. That's a dude that's playing the same game as you, but he's not the enemy. It's just not how it is, man. I'm telling you. He says dumb shit just like everybody else. Everybody says dumb shit sometimes. Some people believe dumb shit throughout their whole lives, but him believing something that you think is dumb doesn't affect your fucking life. People robbing you at gunpoint and using that money to fund Israel and Ukraine, that's your enemy. Just to be clear. I want everybody to be clear about that.
And the last point I'll make on this is people change. And if you don't allow them to change, then what the fuck are we all doing here and having these goddamn conversations every day? So, shit, man.
He did tell me he would admit that he was wrong if Trump does what he says he's going to do.
Oh, really?
Yep, so.
on that show?
Yep.
Interesting. Well, we'll find out, kids. 6 days away. We will re-upload this as soon as it is over. And then hopefully we'll be live for the NFL show on Drinkin' Bros Sports here in a little bit. That's a separate feed on YouTube. That one doesn't get fucked with at all, though. So
it's weird.
Strange. We'll find out in a few minutes here. Appreciate you tuning in. Go to iTunes, rate the show 5-star, and leave a quick review. Also, head on over to Spotify. It's just a 5-star, and you can walk away. For D'Anthony Holloway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros Podcast. Good night, everyone.